Hey, everybody, this is Wendi Hill with another episode of Confessions from the Home Office. I've been working out of my house for almost 20 years, running my marketing firm in Greenville, South Carolina, Market Momentum. And today we have a guest. This is Chelsea Rikard. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about all the different things that you have to take on as a business owner that you don't really have to think about when you're an employee. And one of them was legal issues. And so Chelsea is one of the managing partners of a business law firm in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I've worked with Chelsea and her law partner, Lauren, for several years, and they have done a fantastic job. Chelsea is a business litigator, and she also helps clients with non-litigation matters. And I feel like she knows everything that a business owner needs to know and needs to prepare for with self-employment and just with different interactions with customers and if there's ever any issues with anything. So Chelsea is a graduate of USC Law. She teaches at Converse College in Spartanburg. She's a mom of two. She knows the juggle. So she gives great straightforward advice, and I'm so glad you're here.
Ah, thank you. That was a great introduction. I feel very flattered.
I was kind of on the fly. I think I've known you long enough to do some of that. But I have a couple of questions, but I'm sure we're going to go off topic a little bit. I feel like when I meet other small business owners, whether it's somebody who's just starting or they've been in it for a little while, you realize they're not prepared at all. And so, what do you feel like are the legal documents that you need to have on hand, ready to go when you start your business?
Well, the first thing is when you're starting, you really do need to actually create and adopt a formal structure. And what I mean by that is you need to have an LLC or a corporation. There are different types of corporations, but I do not want to see someone that is operating as a sole proprietor or as a partnership. How you know whether or not you have formally created a business is you're actually going to have to go to somewhere like the Secretary of State to file documents to create your business.
Right.
I just see so many people who are like, yeah, I've been operating for a certain amount of years and now they want to incorporate, or they just kind of think, well, I'm still small, and that's just that you only incorporate when you've gotten to a certain level. No. You want to incorporate, right at the bat, right out the gate, because you're going to immediately get that protection of protecting your personal assets. And so that is first and foremost what I would do. And then just taking a look at what type of business you're running. Are you a service industry? Are you selling goods? And do you need some contracts and get your insurance? It really, that is standard regardless of the size of the business that you're going to have or you have at the moment. So you need to do that for anything.
So I'll have people say to me, well, what can I just use? And I don't think that's around anymore, LegalZoom, but one of these online services. And so that always makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
What do you tell people when they say that's what they've done or that's what they're planning to do?
Um, I mean, it's kind of a catch 22.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
LegalZoom, do they have lawyers? Of course they do. I mean, because they have to. I will say there are people who have come to me who have used LegalZoom or used some other type of entity, and I have caught mistakes that those other places have made. I would say there's just some additional steps that have to be taken to actually like fully transition the business into the client's name and true ownership. And so these types of things are reviewed by lawyers, but what you're not getting, from my experience at least that I see, what I don't think that you're getting if you do use one of those types of places is some real customization as to what you want and what you need. Such as if you have an LLC, you want an operating agreement. And I can't say for sure somewhere like LegalZoom or not gives you an operating agreement, but I'd be willing to bet that if you do, it's not really narrowly tailored to what you're doing and what your needs are and what your future growth goals are. Especially if you have more than one owner, that operating agreement can really make or break, your relationship with your co-owner. And if you have a corporation, that would be your bylaws. And so, when I have clients who I'm starting an LLC for or a corporation for, we really drill down on what an ideal relationship looks like between those co-owners and making sure that that is really set up at the beginning and that stage is set up and it's very clear. So basically you've got documents in place that says, who has the authority to do what and when and how much, and if there's a dispute between the two of us, this is how it's handled. If one of us wants to leave, this is how it's handled. And so, our design at our firm is we want to give you the legal infrastructure to prevent you from ever being in trouble. And I think that's honestly one of the biggest misnomers about lawyers, especially business lawyers, is that you need to be in trouble before you hire a lawyer.
Right.
I literally just had a conversation last weekend with a family member of mine in a different town, and she was like, "Well, and she said, "Yeah, I just opened a business 6 months ago." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, congratulations!" And I said, "Well, if you ever need anything, call me, And she goes, "Well, if I ever get in trouble, I will." And I was like, "You don't need to be in trouble." And I'm like, the whole point is don't set yourself up now to never be in that position, or even if you are finding yourself in needing some true legal advice or counsel or whatever, you at least have set yourself up for the strongest case possible by having either operating agreements or contracts or whatever it is in place, and having what we call like that legal infrastructure.
Okay.
That was a very long-winded answer.
No, I mean, it all makes sense. I mean, but what are like the key legal considerations around having all these agreements? What is it really protecting you from?
Well, I will say when someone comes to me and they're like, "Hey, I want to start my business," and they don't necessarily know what type of structure they want, we usually the two key things that everyone's focused on is reducing their tax liability and then making sure that their personal liability is also significantly reduced, and basically protecting their own personal assets such that their home can't be sold or their car can't be sold to satisfy a business debt or a judgment against the business, something of that nature. And so you're going to get the greatest protection in those two ways by having either an LLC or a corporation. So the way that we approach this is I could tell you, okay, this is the kind of protection you're going to get with an LLC, and this is the kind of protection you're going to get with a corporation. Now, based on your tax plan, which you should have in conversation with your CPA, and I work closely with many of my clients' CPAs to come up with, okay, which structure is going to give them the best of both worlds, basically, or at least try to get as close to their perfect world scenario of, reducing their tax liability every year as much as they can, and having the greatest personal liability protection. And so when we're talking about setting up your business structure, those are usually the two biggest considerations. Right. Now, as far as, when we talk about contracts and things of that nature, there are all kinds of contracts that come into play regardless of what type of business you have. I mean, a lot of businesses are using independent contractors, or some people call them 1099s. Right. If you're a service industry, you need to have a contract. Even if you sell goods and you're invoicing or you're providing estimates and operating on POs, then you really need some good terms and conditions either on your website or attached to your invoices, because contract law is, it can make or break. Just like an operating agreement can make or break the relationship between you and your co-owners, if you have a significant enough transaction or service that you are providing to someone and something goes wrong in that transaction, then a good contract can quite frankly make or break the entirety of the business. For example, I have had clients who needed to, they were trying to go after a debt or someone that owed them money of $30,000, $35,000, maybe $40,000. And they came to me and they didn't have a written contract and they did a handshake. And I get it. Like, in this world, we still believe, if you will, that a handshake contract will uphold, and verbal contracts do stand under the law. The issue is proof, proving what were the terms of contract when it is completely verbal. But unfortunately, in the state of South Carolina, if you don't have attorney's fees in a written contract, then you're not getting them under a breach of contract lawsuit. And so when that client comes to me and they're like, "Hey, someone owes me $35,000, $40,000," and I say, depending on how hard that person fights me in court, right, your attorney's fees could very well reach that amount. And so then my client's like, "Wait a second, it's going to cost me $40 to chase $40?" And I say, It could. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that it will be 40. It could be 20. We could settle and not only, have 15 in charges or whatever. But I can't sit here and guarantee that it won't be 40. I can't guarantee that it won't be 60. It really, there's so many factors that play into how long litigation goes. And so depending on the size of your business, I mean, $40,000, it can really make or break a business. And if that's the situation that you're in, and the whole thing that would have changed that was one contract with one term in it that allowed you to get attorney's fees. And that all would have been taken care of if you had just, spend some time at the beginning of creating your business and making sure that you have that in contract.
Oh no, I mean, I keep everything, and everybody laughs how many files I have and emails I have saved, but it's
Yeah.
helped over the years. I mean, you want to take people at their word, but you just never know. So, situations change.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but you do have to operate with just a certain level of paranoia, if you will.
You do. Small business owner always slightly paranoid. Yeah, I get it.
It's the way 24/7. It really is. And I had to tell my clients, like, they'll say, well, I just had a phone conversation and we agreed to X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, that's great. Now you need to send an email that says, just to follow up on our phone call, we all agreed to X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I get that's annoying. I get that's an extra step. And I get that you're probably getting on that person's nerve as well. But guess what? That email could come back and save your butt, And
Absolutely.
it's just documenting, paper trailing, everything. Everything. And even I have clients who are like, can you just pick up the phone and call me? Yeah, of course I can. And I'm going to follow up with an email. Or I prefer email because then if I don't remember specifics, well, now have an email. And
Right.
I've got a paper trail. And I'm like you, I just don't throw things away and, organize everything and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, besides setting up agreements the right way and contracts to cover yourself, I think another thing I always hear about is, oops, I've been paying my house payment out of my business account or this or that. So, can you talk to us a little bit about keeping things separate and why? And I've heard you say piercing the veil so many times. If you can explain that.
Yeah. So, the whole purpose of having an LLC or having a corporation is to make sure that your personal assets can never be attached to or be liquidated to pay a business debt or to pay off a business liability or judgment or something. But just simply having an LLC or a corporation in and of itself is not enough. I mean, you've got to make sure you are then running that entity appropriately to make sure that you're going to keep that insulation. And the law calls it a veil. We call it a corporate veil that's basically between you and your person. It's almost like the veil that covers you as an individual owner. And so there are ways that an attorney can what we call pierce the veil, like you just said. And the way that we do that is we have to prove three things. We have to prove that you didn't keep up with certain corporate formalities, such as filing annual meeting minutes in your corporate book, or making sure that the meetings between co-owners in which you voted on very important things weren't documented. And then I have to prove that you were mixing funds, and that's what you were just referring to. And mixing funds it does not mean that, hey, my business needs some money and I've got $5,000 sitting in the bank and I'm going to put that in my business. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. So long as that is appropriately booked as a loan from you into your business, that's not a problem. If I see that as an attorney, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's terrible. But what I don't want to see is the reverse of that. I don't want to see, I need money and my business has it, so my mortgage needs to be paid, so I'm going to write a check from my business bank account and pay off my mortgage. Or, hey, I really want a new diamond today and I'm going to go put it on my business credit card. No, those are personal transactions. They are not business expenses. The only thing that should ever appear on your business's check registry, credit card statements, bank statements are business-related expenses. Now, don't get me mistaken, though. Even I have been in the position where I traveled out of town, forgot to tell my bank, my credit card got declined, and I was like, oh my gosh. And the only other card I had on me was my firm's card. And
Right.
so I ran that transaction. But I immediately called, my CPA or my office manager, and I was like, hey, you're going to see an expense for this on the card. Make sure that that is booked as a draw to me, and that is put against my capital account. And so it is appropriately booked as an actual draw to me for which I'm responsible, and it's not a business expense. And so that happens. That's common. That's fine. But you have to make that additional step of actually making sure that it was booked appropriately. Otherwise, it just looks like the business paid a personal expense. And so that we want to be aware that we are not, mixing the personal and the business funds. And you should not ever treat the business as your personal piggy bank, ever. I get it. I mean, people come to me like, oh, I'm sorry, but this is my business. So why is that not my money? It is. It will become your money when you distribute it to yourself as money.
Right.
Once it's in your pocket, it's your money. But so long as it's in the business's account, it's the business's money. The phrase that I always use with my clients is, if you want the court to see the business as not you, then you need to treat the business as not you. But if you see that business as yours and yours only, well, then the court should too. And a
Right.
lawyer should too.
That's
So
great.
you can kind of always keep that in mind in everything that you're doing, and when you operate the business, then you should be safe. You should be safe.
Good. That was a really good answer. I think it probably will scare a couple people into cleaning up a bit. You mentioned a couple minutes ago about contractors versus employees. And so I talk to other small business owners and they'll talk about, hey, I just have a contractor and I just have contractors, but my contractors work for multiple people. I know other businesses where the contractor is really just working for them. I know there's kind of a gray area and people are worried about the IRS and should they be a contractor or an employee? Is that something that you can talk about here?
So I do think that that's kind of another, I guess, mistake, I'll call it, that I've seen people make of, hey, I just issue a 1099 and that means they're a 1099 or they're an independent contractor. And I have to tell them, listen, issuing a 1099 in and of itself, that is all you do, that's not enough to prove that this person truly is an independent contractor such that they, need their own workers' comp insurance or they need to be paying their own taxes, things of that nature. And I've had to litigate this before. So
Okay.
the word that you always need to remember is control. Control, control, control. The way this issue tends to arise within the legal system is someone who you perceive as a 1099 or independent contractor gets hurt and wants to file a workers' comp claim, or the IRS is looking into it, or Department of Labor is looking at it, or the court system is looking at it. And they all have their own tests that they apply to analyze whether or not someone is truly an employee or an independent contractor. But the common theme or the common denominator in all those tests is control. And what I mean by that is we take an in-depth analysis of that relationship that you as a business have with that person, and we see how much control you are operating or exercising over that person.
Okay.
Are you giving them all the tools and equipment that they need to complete the job? Are you telling them when and where to show up and how long to stay? Are you assigning them to work? Are you dictating how much they're going to get paid? Are you telling them how many days a week they got to work? Are you the only person that they work for? Do you provide a truck? Do you provide a car? All those sorts of things. The more control, as you kind of start to see, the more control in terms of that relationship that you are dictating, the more likely it looks like that they are actually an employee and not an independent contractor. The construction world is a little bit different because a lot of independent contractors, or even anybody that is issued a 1099, the insurance companies still want to see their own workers' comp. And so that usually is taken care of a little bit in and of itself. But, if you think about like a builder who is going to subcontract out the roof that's going to be built on a home, I mean, he's going to have a contract with that person. And most
Right.
likely that roofer has a lot of people that they work for. But if that person that's installing the roof and this is the only builder that they always work for, and the builder is the one that's like, hey, I've got these 5 homes and you're going to come do it and I'm going to pay you this much, and hey, come pick up my truck and do it, and I bought the shingles and they'll be delivered on time. I mean, the more that builder is supplying, the more it looks like, okay, maybe this person actually is an employee, such that if that person, falls off the ladder or something, gets hurt, and they file a workers' comp claim, the workers' comp commission is going to look in and do this analysis that I just did and ask all these questions and say, is this person person actually an employee, or are they actually truly an independent contractor, and should they have been covered? And if the workers' comp commission finds that this person was an employee and they haven't been covered, those fines and penalties and back coverage gets expensive. It gets very expensive. So what we do is, in a perfect world scenario, you've got a contract between you and that person. When I say you, I mean your business. You have a contract in between the two of you that lays out all these sorts of things. But again, even a contract in and of itself is not enough. You have to make sure that, you're giving them a lot of flexibility. And there are plenty of clients that I have to have this conversation with when they're like, hey, I've got these 1099s or whatever. And I said, okay, let's just talk about that conversation. Let's just talk about the relationship and, give me some more information about it. And I say, I know that you want to be able to dictate this and that, and you've got a policy and procedures manual that you want them to follow. But they don't have to. I mean, if they're an independent contractor and you call them up and be like, you got to be there at 8, and they're like, no, thank you, I don't need that job that day because I've got something else. Well, you really don't have any recourse against them. And sometimes, there are plenty of times when I have that conversation with my clients, they're like, wait a second, what? I want to be able to tell them those things, and I was like, well, then you should probably, consider actually making them an employee. And plenty of times they have converted, and that means that they've got to go buy that workers' comp insurance and all that sort of thing.
Wow. Well, I think that's a lot for people to think about because, it is so much easier just to issue a 1099 and say, forget it. But imagine what could happen after a court case. Well, the last thing I want to talk about today is FINCEN. So I need to do something with this. So I want to hear your answer some more about this. Can you explain what FINCEN is? And a lot of people probably already know about it. Some newer business owners may not, and what they need to do by the end of the year.
So a federal law was passed in 2023 that is requiring every business owner in the entire country. There is a list of exceptions, but they're very narrowly tailored. Every business owner in the entire country has to report who their owners are to FINCEN. And FINCEN is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It's a federal government agency. And if you created your business prior to 2024, then you have until the end of this year to file that report. It is called a Beneficial Owners Information Report, or a BOI.
Okay.
And the law was passed in response to a lot of shell companies being created in order to get and funnel a lot of COVID relief money. That was happening, quite extensively. And so they're really, really trying to crack down on a lot of these shell companies. And the way that they do that is by having you report who the owners of your business are. A lot of people, and I've got clients too, who are like, I don't really want, the fact that I own a business or that I own this particular business to be public information. Trust that anything that you report on your BOI is not public. It cannot, not like we're in the Secretary of State, I can go pull articles of incorporation. I can't go pull someone's BOI report. And I researched this quite some time ago, but there are extreme circumstances in which someone can access that report, and it's very, very, very limited. If you don't file the report by December 31st of this year, it is $500 a day, capped at $10,000. And so that is an incredible fine, and that's how important it is. It is, I just helped someone yesterday go through the report and prepare theirs. It's a little bit confusing, but also a little bit straightforward. It's online. It's like an online fillable form. It takes pretty much 5 minutes. You have to do it for every single business that you own. So if you're in the situation where, you've got a business that's owned by an LLC, that's owned by a holding company, every single one of those is going to have to complete one. It's not just, your ground level business. And so if you're one of those that has, just kind of a network of businesses, make sure you set aside the time to do it. But it's a significant change in the law. And if you create a new business from here forward, then you've got to do it. I think it's within 90 days of creating that business. You've got to file a report. So, it's a pretty significant new development. And it is utterly shocking to me, though, how little information is out there about this. I mean, the client that I met with yesterday was like, I found out about this from, social media. And I said, I'm a business lawyer, and I found out about this via social media. I sent it to my law partner. I saw a video on Instagram, and I sent it to my law partner, Lauren, here, and I said, this isn't real. This can't be real. I would not. I would have gotten an email. I mean, you know how many legal e-blasts and things I subscribe to, and
Right.
legal updates that we get, and there's absolutely not a thing about this. I mean, what? It's so shocking. It's shocking. I'll get off that soapbox. But yeah,
No, maybe those bonds are going to help chip away at the national debt.
I
Just
mean, yeah, right.
I mean, I started thinking up to $10,000 per business. That's crazy.
It's
Oh my
wild.
gosh. Okay. Well, I'll put that on my list to work on next week then.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, is there anything else that you want to share? Anything you feel like we didn't talk about that you think people need to know?
Um, I think I work with so many small business owners, and I am a small business owner myself, and so I tell people this, especially my clients, all the time. My job is to advise you on a perfect world scenario of what I want to see, and but I also deal in reality, and I understand that certain things that I'm asking you to do, certain contracts or whatever, that it creates a little bit more burden on you, whether it may be paperwork or something else, additional checks. And I understand that sometimes it's not entirely feasible for you to follow the exact advice that I've given you. So I get that, and we do our best to try to find that balance for you. But as a person that's running my own business and practicing law, it's a hard balance to find, and I don't know that you ever truly find the balance of spending time actually doing what it is that your business is versus actually running the business. And speaking of perfect world scenario, I would love that my calendar looks like Monday and Tuesday. You're only, doing your
I
accounting,
know.
doing your
I know.
marketing, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're going to court and meeting clients. Never.
No.
I get it, and there is I was literally just talking to a very long term friend of mine yesterday who's thinking about going and opening her own business. And she's like, "Do you like it?" And I say, "I love it. I mean, it's for me. It's not for everybody. It's for me. As a mom of very young kids, like I love the flexibility of having my own schedule, dictating my own cases, what I take, what I don't take, taking time when I need it. I don't have someone looking over my shoulder. But I'm responsible for making sure there's enough money in the bank account to feed the staff I have and make sure that they've got food on their table. And
Right.
it's sometimes it is a Sunday afternoon kind of job or what have you, and it's always something on your mind. And you do have to find that balance. It's not that if I were an associate somewhere, I could just come in and focus on my cases and my cases only and make sure I got my billables in and that's done. So it is a balance, but to me, it's a beautiful balance. It's worth it. And so I'm always excited for new businesses that come in. I just right before I sat down with you, we signed the corporate book for some guys who were starting a new business, and they were just so happy, and they were taking pictures, and they were eager. And I remember
Yeah.
when I was there, I was like a
I,
new baby. You're like, oh, it's so exciting, because it's a new venture in their life. A lot of times, this is something that people have thought about for a very long time, and so I absolutely love working with
it's a huge
businesses.
step.
my I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and so I kind of just share in this um, I don't know, this lifestyle, I guess, if you will. But it's a good balance to find. But given that I'm on the legal side of it, I want to help you protect that baby and protect what it is that you're working so hard to build. Because a lot of people are trying to build that generational wealth and legacy, and making sure that you get that done is always a priority for us.
Well, that's great. That's great. That was all such good information. How can people get in touch with you if they're in South Carolina and they need a business attorney?
Yeah, so our name is actually A Business Law Firm. That's the name of the firm. We're in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We have a website, abizlaw at abizlaw.com, and our number is 864-699-9801. My name is Chelsea. My law partner's name is Lauren, and we are here really to just help all kinds of business owners of any and all size, whether it's starting or you got a 20, 30-year-old business that you're trying to move into succession planning or grow or what have you. We love working with all of them.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking time. I know it's Friday and everybody wants to get wrapped up and get going, but I appreciate it so much. You've been so much help
Having
over
me.
the years and know so much. So, well, thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye.